On a clear morning in San Francisco, from a distance, it still looks like what it was promised to be. 58 stories of dark glass and polished stone rise above the Soma district, its lobby fitted with hand-cut marble, its upper floors commanding views that stretch from the Bay Bridge to the Pacific. It named itself for the millennium it was meant to outlast. But if you know where to stand and look carefully at the roofline against the sky, you can see it. A lean, subtle, deliberate, undeniable. The Millennium Tower has sunk 18 inches into the ground and tilted 14 inches to the northwest. It is moving still. And what makes it singular is this. The people who built it knew exactly why it would happen. They built it anyway. This is the terrible engineering behind San Francisco's sinking skyscraper. Beneath the glass and marble, the ground tells a different story. San Francisco's eastern core sits atop a thick band of bay mud, fine-grained, waterlogged clay that blankets the old shoreline in layers up to 45 meters deep. This is not solid earth, but a living, shifting medium. Its water content is high, its structure loose. When loaded with weight, bay mud compresses and consolidates, squeezing out water over years or decades. The compression index, measured at approximately 0.5, signals a soil primed for settlement, far beyond what any engineer would accept beneath a skyscraper. Effective stress in this mud is low, often just 10 to 30 kilopascals, with undrained shear strength dropping to 5 to 15 kilopascals at depth. Under pressure, the mud yields and settles, unable to hold its shape against the relentless demands of concrete and steel. This is a foundation that remembers every ton placed above it, and it never stops moving. The warning signs were written into the city's own history. In 1906, when the ground shook, devastation mapped itself along the soft underbelly of San Francisco. Buildings anchored on bedrock stood firm, while those resting on more than 30 meters of bay mud and fill buckled, twisted, and in many cases collapsed outright. USGS surveys documented how seismic waves multiplied in the mud, amplifying ground motion by a factor of 4 or 5 compared to the Franciscan complex beneath Nob Hill. The same pattern returned in 1989. Loma Prieta's long-period shaking reactivated old scars. Lateral spreading split streets, and liquefaction ruptured gas lines in Soma and the Marina, where the mud layer ran thickest. Failures clustered precisely where engineers had always known the danger lay, in the deep, saturated sediments along the eastern waterfront. The lesson was unambiguous. The ground beneath the city could not be relied upon to hold its shape when stressed. These disasters were not mysteries. They were forecasts, documented and mapped, waiting for the next ambitious structure to test their patience. In the boardrooms and back offices, the numbers made the argument. On paper, the difference was $58 million, a line item that dwarfed every other variable in the foundation debate. The 58-story Millennium Tower, a symbol of luxury and permanence, would rise not on bedrock but on friction piles, sunk 80 feet into bay mud. The developer's internal spreadsheet, later entered as evidence, laid out the calculus. Friction piles meant a baseline construction cost of $785 million. Anchoring to bedrock would push that total to $843 million. The savings were irresistible, especially with projected sales exceeding $750 million and penthouses priced in the tens of millions. Engineers and accountants weighed the risks in memos and cost models, reducing geology to a budget line. The ground, ancient and indifferent, was treated as a negotiable expense. The decision was not an oversight. It was deliberate, justified by a promise that the friction piles would hold. The spreadsheet's cold arithmetic became the foundation's moral fault line. The official stamp of approval arrived with the city's Department of Building Inspection, backed by a peer review panel assembled to scrutinize the foundation design. Permits were issued in May 2015, certifying that the 58-story Millennium Tower met code, seismic, and geotechnical requirements. The regulatory process did not demand bedrock anchoring. Instead, it accepted the engineer's forecast of 4 inches of total settlement, spread over the building's service life. That number, 4 inches, became the baseline written into structural calculations and city records. The review board, composed of outside engineers, signed off on the friction pile system, concluding that the predicted movement fell within accepted limits for high-rise towers in bay mud. The building opened in 2009, marketed as a permanent addition to the skyline. The permits, the forecasts, and the signatures all converged on a single assumption that the ground would behave as predicted, and that the tower's weight could be negotiated with paperwork and professional consensus. Numbers became the building's harshest critics. Monitoring Report 135, released by the city's inspection division, charted a vertical settlement of more than 16 inches, 4 times the design allowance, while tilt readings at the roof reached 14 inches off plumb. The instruments, indifferent to marketing promises or legal arguments, recorded an accelerating descent, with annual settlement rates that doubled after 2015, peaking at over 1 inch per year prior to the retrofit. Each graph, each data point, stripped away the last defense of optimism. The engineering forecast had not merely been exceeded, it was obliterated. The evidence was unambiguous. This was not a mystery, not a hidden flaw, but the measured collapse of confidence in the foundation's promise. The retrofit was supposed to be the rescue. 18 new piles, drilled deep to bedrock, promised to halt the descent. But as the work began, the ground responded with its own verdict. An extra 2 to 3 inches of settlement in a matter of weeks, recorded by the city's monitoring reports. Sales listings multiplied as confidence evaporated. Unsold units lingered, prices dropped by up to a quarter, and penthouses once listed at $8 million sat vacant. Policy advocates seized on the fallout, pushing for mandatory bedrock anchoring and public disclosure of real-time settlement data for all future high-rise permits. The ground, unmoved by lawsuits or market optimism, forced the city to reckon with what had been ignored. Geology is not a line item to be negotiated. The Millennium Tower would not collapse, but its slow motion descent became a caution written in concrete and mud. Gravity doesn't negotiate. 58 stories, $750 million in sales, and $58 million saved. Yet the ground keeps sinking. The Millennium Tower won't collapse. Its failure is slower, more permanent, and entirely chosen.